My grandma traveled up to Canada to visit a few times when I was young, but it was only once I was 7, when we moved to Minnesota to be closer to my mom's family after my dad died, that I came to spend time enough with her to realize who she was other than just my mom's mom. We moved in to her Richfield home that summer, and while my mom was out job and house hunting, Grandma watched and entertained my brother and me. And we needed entertainment. Still devastated from losing our father, we were confused and afraid, not knowing what it really meant. And as we gradually figured it out, each new revelation was a fresh source of anxiety, grief, or anger. And then on top of it all, we moved to America, which seemed like a louder, meaner version of Canada, all the worse because it was away from every memory we had of our father. So my grandma taught us German curses while we played board games. She must have learned them from her German-speaking parents, cursing in earnest at their own card games, but we learned to do it in jest. Whenever something bad happened to her in the game, she'd cuss with glee. Looking back, I'm pretty sure she let us win most of the time, and it made it seem realer if she was pretending to be angry to lose. So a favorite was Scheist auf der Loof, which I'm not sure if it's real German or not. I've tried to look it up. Maybe it's just like a Red Wing colloquialism, but she told us it meant poo on the roof. A phrase which meaning is every bit as obvious and mysterious to me today as it was back then. My grandma made it clear that saying it was the funnest way to lose, though, so soon we were joining in and learning new ones for variety. Being young boys, schwanz, meaning penis, or as we used to say back then, wiener or goo-goo, was soon our favorite, and it quickly became family tradition to say it not when losing, but before every dice roll for good luck. We go, schwanz. So when I think of why I love my grandma, past the general reasons we all love our grandmas, I think of that transformation. Back then, I was so scared of life, I used to stay awake in bed for as long as I could, as silently as I could, listening to my heartbeat so that if it stopped, I could tell my mom before I died. But while with Grandma, I was jumping out of my chair to joyfully scream German penis at the top of my lungs. I'm sure that's where I learned to joke my way through tough times, an instinct that has helped me ever since. So as things got hard for my grandma with age, it was heartening to see that she always held on to her humor. Even that last Thanksgiving, 2 Thanksgivings past now, when things were getting more difficult and painful and exhausting for her, she had us all laughing on several occasions. Carol had always been the queen of the non sequitur, but so over the last few years of her life, it was sometimes hard to tell if she was changing the subject to be funny because she couldn't hear what was just said, or if she'd just gotten bored with sober conversation. Regardless of why, as conversation flagged towards the end of dessert, she announced to the whole room, "I have a confession to make." We all stopped to listen, and she started telling a story about a night shift she'd once worked in a hospital. She'd been a nurse her whole life, but this took place back when she was still a young woman. Mr. Wilkinson, on the other hand, was old. "Oh, Lord, he was old," she explained. "Old as dirt. He was older than I am now. So old he could hardly do anything. Couldn't walk around or push his own wheelchair. Couldn't even sit up in bed without some help. He was old, 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 old. But at night, he slept as a young man." I think we were all a little confused about this turn of phrase, but having once been a young man for a time myself, and noticing the mischievous glimmer in her eyes, I felt like I had a clue of what she might mean. But still, I could barely believe what she was talking about, even as she continued. "So every night, making the rounds, I'd walk by his room and check on him, and there old Mr. Wilkinson would be, sleeping as a young man. All us nurses joked about it. It was terrible. One of those things you didn't want to look at but couldn't help it. There he was, every night, tenting the sheet." She was. Grandma was talking about Mr. Wilkinson's schwanz. And then, she continued, one night it was worse than ever before. It had tipped the sheet onto the floor and even parted his gown. And I couldn't help it. I ran out to the break room, peeled a sticker off a Chiquita banana, and snuck back in to put it on him. Then I told Eileen to go check on Mr. Wilkinson. She laughed so hard she could barely make it out of her room before she doubled over on the floor. In addition to raising some great jokers, Carol May also rose some incredible healthcare professionals. So there was a bit of an outcry in the family about losing your license that evening, but I mostly just laughed. Or I laughed and thought about why we joke. This wasn't just some crass anecdote, but a chance to talk about what we were all afraid to talk about that night. A way to simultaneously look at and let go of that which had been haunting the whole evening, the pains and humiliation of aging. Whether you're missing your dad or worried about your health, while laughing, all your sufferings and anxieties are briefly obliterated. Joking is a way for us to look at what we don't want to see but know we can't ignore. It's a way to put a bright sticker on the wrinkled schwants we have to stare down every night. Joking keeps us whole, so thank you, Carol May, for teaching me how. Through nearly a century of loss, pain, disappointment, and conflict, Carol May managed to not just keep a smile on her face, but to put one on the faces of nearly everyone she met. So if you'll excuse the turn of phrase, I'll end by saying that, though she's now at rest, I know Carol May rests as a young woman, full of love, hope, compassion, and mischief.